Hi there, Malcolm here with my 209th Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you my worst 10 reads of 2024. Now, before you accuse me of being a negative Nelly, I have just done a best 10 reads of 2024. Link below, go check that out to know that I can be positive about books. And with 65 books in my 5-star collection on Storygraph, I'm very positive about books. However, out of the 166 books I've read this year, some are going to be at the top, some are going to be at the bottom. These are the bottom 10. Now, disclaimer time, this is not an attack on you. You are allowed to like any of the books that I mentioned down below. Great, glad you got something out of it that I didn't. And indeed, if you do like any of the books I will mention, comment, tell me, why did you like it? I'm curious to know. Or why indeed you share my opinion and thought it wasn't as good as everyone else makes out. Anyway, with 10 books to get through, let's get cracking. Now, to actually clarify a little bit here, there was only one book in the 1-star slot on Storygraph. So there's only one book I generally did hate. There's one book in the 2-star slot, which was more of a disappointment than anything else. And there were 15 in 3-star. 3-star for me is, it was readable. It was fine. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing particularly stood out for me. It's sort of the standard bare minimum what one expects out of a book. So they weren't bad, but with only 2 books in the low categories, I had to then go to the not bad category and try and whittle out the worst 8 of those. And so though they do feature on this bottom 10 list, I'm not saying these are awful in any stretch of the imagination. And generally it meant that they were disappointing in some way, rather than they were bad. And that might be down to me having a higher expectation of it. And these 8 aren't in any particular order. I'm not saying one's better or worse than the other. They just happen to be on this list. Anyway, let's get on it. So in 10th place is Point Horror The Waitress by Sinclair Smith. Now, Point Horror is a bit of a hit and miss for me. Sometimes they are fantastic and sometimes they're a little bit And this one was a little bit It wasn't awful, it was just the motive behind the perpetrator doing the things that was going on just was nonsensical and self-destructive, and I just thought it was ridiculous, really, like I do with many of these big reveals about who did it and why. But it was the one that annoyed me the most this year. And the main story itself just wasn't that interesting. In 9th place was Blue Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson. Red Mars, fantastic. Green Mars, fantastic. Blue Mars, it was alright, just felt unnecessary. The story was pretty much wrapped up by the end of the second book, and this was quite a long book. Well, they're all quite long books, but this was just a lot of what happened next, and what happened next really wasn't very much at all, really. There was a final consolidation, I would say, between 2 of the original 100, but apart from that, it just didn't do anything. In 8th place was Clash of the Sky Galleons by Paul Stewart and Chris Riddle, and this is part of the Edge Chronicles and book 3 of the prequel trilogy following the character Quint. Now, I read these books to my younger son, and for the most part they're okay, but they never really went anywhere. The plot never really got plotting, and I think this was the 3rd trilogy they did together, and they still don't really go anywhere, and it just went on a bit. And yeah, I know these are designed for younger children, but you know, this should be the 9th book that they've read by now, unless they're going chronologically, and you expect a little bit more from a book series by this point. Well, anyway, I did. In 7th place was Buffy 97. This was one of the more recent graphic novels released in the Buffy the Vampire universe, and just didn't really justify its existence. It had one unique story at the front where Buffy gets sucked into a shopping magazine, which was different, but the artwork wasn't great, and then the other stories in it were already existing on the collections, and so, well, why does this book even exist? Yeah, I just didn't really seem to point to it. The Toho was by Annalee Newitz. This one had a great premise. I read the blurb, but it told me about this character and the things that were going to happen and the big mystery. I thought, oh great, this looks great. Yeah, that was the first third of the book. There's a big time jump to different characters and a different thing, and you just get used to them, and then there's another time jump at some bunch of different characters again doing a different thing. It's all set on the same planet, the same sort of theme, but no terraforming going on. The terraforming's already happened, and we don't really follow terraformers themselves either, so the blurb is misleading, the title is misleading, and the story, you know, you just get into what's going on, and then there's a time jump, and it's like, well, I've got to start over again. I stopped caring. A bit of a disappointment, really. In 5th place, another Buffy the Vampire Slayer book, which was The Lost Summers, and this is the 2nd book of the Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer series. Now, Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer was fantastic. I thought this was absolutely amazing. And I think on my review said, looking forward to reading a second book of this. Here it is, and it was just disappointing. It was a collection of short stories, many of which weren't even in this particular universe. And then finally we do get to the one that is in the universe, and it didn't do anything. It was another, well, we've got to do something, but didn't have any good ideas. You know, I'd much rather wait longer for something good rather than having something quicker and, well, what's the point? A huge disappointment here. In fourth place was Wonder and the Vision. This is one of the Marvel Selects. I've been collecting these and most of them are pretty good. This one wasn't. It had a couple of revamped origin stories for Wonder and the Vision, which were alright. Nothing particularly special, but they were there. And then we had the original telling of their wedding reprinted. And unfortunately, because that was sort of mid-major plot development, it was, I don't know who any of these characters are and what's going on and what's this and where's this. So I felt lost for that one for a lot of it. And then the final one, about the origin of her children, the TV show did it better. And this was just some weird, disturbing thing that should have had a large warning label. Yeah, but disappointing. And third place is Stairway to Mars by John Wyndham. In my opinion, probably one of the worst things that John Wyndham has ever written. It took a long time to get going, and the whole thing just felt uninspired. There's some weird motivations, there was some weird character choices, and how he treated the female character at the end of the story was just atrocious. I previously praised John Wyndham's writing on how he is so progressive with how he dealt with female characters in his books. He didn't quite manage it in this one. Disappointing. So, in second place, with 2 stars on Storygraph, was The Witcher Fading Memories. This graphic novel series, I think, ties into the video game series. We got the first few and really enjoyed them, and I thought, oh, this is another one of that series, let's give it a go. It was boring. The artwork was bland and uninteresting, the story was bland and uninteresting and virtually non-existent. It didn't go anywhere, it didn't really do anything, and it was a big waste of time, effectively. And finally, in first place, the worst book of 2024 for me was The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu. I'd seen this book on the shelves quite a few times now. I was really intrigued by the cover. I know you shouldn't judge a book by the cover, but the cover was like, ooh, this is a funky cover. I read the blurb, looked intriguing, and finally got to listen to it on Audible. It started off alright, and then it went downhill dramatically. Now, I won't wax lyrical about it here. There is quite a detailed video I've done on this one, breaking down exactly what I thought about it and why. So do go check that one out. Well, I give justifications behind my thoughts on that one. Controversial, I know, but that was how I felt about it and still do. And I've actually had to bite my tongue from waxing lyrical about it now. Already done it, to the past. There's a video there. Don't need to do it again here. Anyway, there we are. That's my worst 10 reads of 2024. All in all, I think I've had a pretty good year. As I said, most of these were a little bit disappointing rather than I didn't like them. If you feel compelled to comment, then please do say what you did like about these, or share what you didn't like about them. And also, if you do have your own personal worst 10 list, then by all means leave a link or a list down below and I'll go and check it out. As usual, if you have nothing nice to say, then please keep it to yourself. Thank you. Go check out my best 10 books of the year, but until next time, see you later.